Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerized, astounded, and entertained. Hello and welcome to another great edition of Veterans to Success. And here is where I speak with veterans, people who have been in the military. And today I've got with me Ellen Harrison. Hello, Ellen. How are you doing?
Hi, Joe. Yeah, really good. Thank you. Yeah, nice. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for joining me. So, as normal, we've had a good chat. I've got pretty much a great handle on where you come from, where you are now, and where you're going to, and your career is amazing. And as always, we do a reveal as we go along. There's no massive introduction because I know what your career is and how great it's been, and I just want you to share it. So let's jump straight in, shall we? And tell me a bit about your time before the military. This is so we can get to know you a little bit more and determine either how mad you were or how serious you were and what got you into the military. So yeah, what happened?
So I grew up in Derbyshire, in Chesterfield in Derbyshire, from a working class family. I was the youngest of 3, so 2 older brothers, and I didn't find school easy. So I really enjoyed going to school. I loved getting up every day, going to school.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really very academic. I was always very hands-on. So my biggest thing that I took from school was I learned to type. Never knew how useful that was going to be in later life, where we live on emails and social media and everything else. That's been really useful. But really at school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. There was kind of an expectation that I'd leave school at 16, go into a job, some kind of administrative job. Hence why I took typing in the first place. But I knew that wasn't for me. I grew up with, my dad had his own coach business, and very often there'd be parts of a coach engine on the dining room table. And so my middle brother was a fabricator, and so engineering was kind of in my family as like that hands-on mechanical type of engineering. Not that I ever thought I could be an engineer then, but I knew that I didn't want to just leave school, go into a job doing the same thing day in, day out, and the office environment just did not spark my interest at all. So it was only really in maybe my last year of school that I really started to think about the military.
Right.
Initially, I thought I'd probably join the army. But then as I started to go on, I was thinking, do I want to join the army? Maybe I want to join the RAF. And then I found that I was at that time, so I left school in 88, that I couldn't join at 16 at that age. So I needed something to do in between. So I found a course which was called the Junior Leadership course. So it was doing outdoor pursuits, but it was kind of the precursor to a military preparation college. So we do like leadership skills, outdoor pursuits, those kind of things. So I applied for that, joined, and then I discovered through there they'd have like careers services come in and discuss about the 3 different services, and I kind of settled on the Navy, which was the Wrens then. So I applied to join the Wrens, but I couldn't join until I was 17 and a half. So I kind of spent my time at college until that point.
Now, interestingly, because I left school a little bit earlier than you, but I know round about that time, typically women worked in the office, right? Men worked in a building site or a physical job, and that was it. So stereotypically, you were going to be a secretary, right? Or you were going to be a typist, and that's why you learned to type it. How did that how did that make you feel at the time?
So at the time, I just thought that's kind of what women do. So
Yeah,
my mum, so because my dad had his own coach business, my mum was kind of taking all the bookings, and so that was kind of what you grew up in that
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
environment. Was, as you said, the men go out and do the driving jobs and mechanical jobs, those kind of things. So I never really thought that I would do that, but I knew that that isn't what I wanted to do. That I just, the thought of me sitting in an office was really frustrating to me. I knew I wanted to do something outdoors. What that was, I hadn't quite decided, but I knew it was something physical, practical, something that I could use my hands for, and not I wasn't studious at all. So I knew that I wouldn't be able to just sit and do this the same job day in, day out. Just was not
Yeah.
something that I knew I'd be able to do.
And it was just as well you thought like that because then you became a Wren, right? And
Yep.
how, right, because that's a big jump from Army, RAF, then
Yeah.
joining the Navy, right? Because so you had all three disciplines and you went for the Navy. So what happened there? Because I'm ex-Army, and I know we rip into each other, and you've always got the Army Navy game down at Twickenham, and it's great. And the fact is, right, that as much competition between Army, Navy, Air Force, there's never any
Yeah.
there's never any trouble. And you're talking about an 80,000 crowd, right? And it's a great day. So what made you choose the Navy when you should have joined the Army, really?
So I think it was because we had briefs from all of the three services, and it kind of appealed to me.
Right.
But even then, I mean, I was, and again, it wasn't really down to the force. It was down to the branch availabilities at the time. So I did look at the RAF, and I was kind of like, well, I could kind of do maybe logistics, but that didn't interest me. And then I picked up the RENS brochure, and again, there was limited branches that you could join at that time, because as we didn't go to sea, all the branches weren't open to us. And
Right.
one that really stood out was being an aircraft engineer. I was kind of like, wow, what, I could be an aircraft engineer. And so I thought that looks so exciting.
That
so
sounds
I, so
I've got to tell you that like that floats my boat. Yeah, definitely.
so it was the branch that really made me choose the Navy, rather than me choose the Navy over the branch.
Yeah, great.
So
Yeah, and I mean, tell me a little bit more about because the letters that represent after your name, because I'm intrigued. Like, what did you do to to get on that journey, the pathway to education? When of course you weren't even academic at school.
no, so I left with no GCSEs, had no qualifications when I left school, apart from typewriting, which I'm very proud of. So yeah, so I left and I joined the Navy, and I thought, well, it doesn't matter, because I've joined a branch where actually I don't need any qualifications, and I was happy with that, and I found that I really turned my hand to it, and I was quite successful in my branch. But when I got my first promotion, I was kind of, then I started thinking, actually, if I do want to progress any further, then I do need some kind of educational
Mm,
background. Because even from an early on, so even though, so we in the Navy, they had like a NAMIC test, which was your English and maths test.
yeah.
But as a non-seagoer, we didn't have to sit that test. So
Ah,
again, there was differences all the way through recruitment. But then it was kind of, you needed a NAMIT 00 to be a warrant officer, to be education warrant officer, or GCSEs. So
right.
then I was thinking, well, do I? So I'd volunteered for sea by this time, because RENs could go to sea. So I volunteered. I knew I didn't just want to be, on a shore base. I wanted to do the whole experience. I thought, well, rather than just go and sit a NAMIT, why don't I do GCSEs? So I signed up at the education centre, and that's kind of where I started on my lifelong learning journey. And I found that actually I'm quite academic. It's just that I didn't know how to apply myself at school. I didn't know how
Mm,
to revise. Didn't have the skills or techniques. Didn't know how to pass exams. So yeah, so then I started on GCSE. So did maths, English, and then I just continued on. And I ended up doing about 7 GCSEs in the end in
wow.
service.
Look,
Yeah.
that's interesting because let me just explore that a bit because someone may be listening and maybe in the same position where they've been pigeonholed as maybe thick or
Yeah,
something like that, because
yeah,
yeah, you can't do that, and then because of that limiting belief as being thrust upon them, they just stay there. Because, like, for instance, me at school, I had an incident which meant I left. I missed year, what was it, year 11. It was the fourth year when I was at school, and then as a consequence, I didn't do well in any exams. In fact, I think I got one. And then when I joined the military, when they said, we're going on the ranges, here's your skill at arms book, read that, because if you don't and you have a negligent discharge, you go into jail. And that's when
yeah.
my education started. And then I just carried on lifelong learning, like yourself.
Yeah.
So what was
Yeah.
going on in your head when you were doing that? Were you thinking, oh, I can't do this because I'm thick, or words to that effect?
So initially I thought, well, yeah, I'm not intelligent. I don't have any. And I used to get really embarrassed when people were talking about, what qualifications they got. And I was thinking, oh, I don't want to join this conversation because I have to say I haven't got any. But then I was kind of like, well, actually, if I want to progress, I need at least maths and English. So that was a starting point. But then I was thinking, actually, there's people going off to Dartmouth and doing officer training and those kind of things.
Yeah,
So then I was kind of like, I'm limiting myself now by not having education. So that was kind of a driver that actually I could be an officer if I get 4 GCSEs now and go into. So then that grew that. And then I kind of got a bug.
yeah.
So then I did GCSEs, then I did an AS level in psychology, and then I did an A level in business studies. So I worked through all of that, and then I got myself a teaching job, teaching aircraft weapons and systems. I was like, actually, I quite like teaching. So then I volunteered to do teaching to service leavers and people that wanted to progress as well. So I started teaching GCE, as it was then, commerce, to people in the Navy. And then I went and did a teaching qualification. So I've now got a certificate in education. And then because I progressed to an A level in business studies, I used to then teach GCSE business studies to people in the Navy that were on the same journey as me, or either part resettlement, part of trying to educate themselves. So I kind of gave back of what I'd taken from the Navy, and then as I moved around different places, so I did it on the ship, Caldro, so all the different places. So as soon as I pitched up, I'd go to the education centre and say, "Oh, this is what I do. Do you want me to teach GCSE business studies?"
Well,
and then they'd take me on.
that's great, because
Yeah,
I know the education centre. When I was in Germany, I went on speaking German courses and all sorts, and it was a really good resource, actually.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it was fabulous, and it's great, like, to have people like you getting involved and wanting to hand down knowledge. Now, interesting point where there was a change over a transition where women couldn't go to sea, and then all of a sudden they allowed you to. What was that like, and what challenges did you face? Because I reckon, if I remember, in the 80s and early 90s, it was certainly different than it is now, if that makes sense. So how did you find that?
it had its challenges. So I wasn't one of the first to go to sea, but I was the first on one of the Sea Harrier squadrons. So when I first came out of training, I was a Sea King engineer. But then when the girls started to volunteer to go to sea, there was gaps on some of those squadrons that never had girls on them. So I was kind of last minute drafted, as it was then, onto a Sea Harrier squadron. And there was nine girls that had been sent onto this squadron, and then we joined. The ship had already sailed, so it's part of when former Yugoslavia started kicking off. So the carriers sailed in January, and then we joined the ship Ark Royal in Naples in April. So we kind of joined en masse.
Was that in the early 90s? Was that
early night? Yeah, that was 93.
Yeah,
we joined
93.
in
Yeah,
93.
yeah.
It was, yeah. So we all kind of joined, not knowing what to expect, and actually thinking it wouldn't be any different because we'd been working on squadrons ashore with, these people ashore. So we didn't think that'd be any difference at sea.
Yeah.
However, there is a difference.
Naively, yeah.
Yeah, and it was and it was kind of, so there was five of us, so there was five girls on one watch, four on the other. And it was almost like, because we were there, the kind of chiefs thought that they had to make sure that they were including the girls and everything that we did, but they were kind of over including us. So
Right.
every time they had a job, they'd send one of the guys, and they go, oh, we need to send one of the girls as well at the same time. And it got to a point where we were going, you do realize that you're sending us to do literally everything, because there's only four of us, but
Yeah.
there's like 40, 50 guys on the watch. So, and so it did take a while. And there was a bit of, oh no, we've always been all males at sea. This is what we do as guys. And so it did take a few years for us to kind of settle into it's the norm.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
guess that's with any change, isn't it?
Yeah. So
But
you were at the forefront of the change, and I mean that's
yeah,
that ratio. Like you were doing 10 times the work of
pretty much.
about yeah.
Yeah.
With so that must have taken a little bit out of you. And
Yeah, it was a bit. With in the end, we'd have to go, look, can you stop doing this? It's like, and they're going, yeah, but we
yeah,
need to make sure we're including you. And we're like, yeah, but
yeah,
you can, just by treating us like as one, not
yeah, yeah. We,
as
we
someone different.
Yeah, we don't particularly like this equality business in the way you're dishing it out, because
Yeah,
it's a bit unequal, uh,
yeah, exactly.
or
Yeah.
unequal even. So, the other thing as well, was as you were learning with blokes, you were on a course one time, and this sadly didn't surprise me that much, though it did disappoint me when you told me. Uh, and I'd like to think that this sort of behaviour doesn't go on anymore. But if you tell me that time, tell us about that time when you were in the classroom and there was a particular comment made, which has given you the same as a lot of military get guilty complex about when the comrades suffer in combat.
Mm.
And you get the why wasn't that me? Well, you've got a similar complex about one particular aspect of your service, haven't you?
Yeah, so I was on a career course, so this was qualifying me to be in the next level, so at leading hand kind of corporal level.
Yeah.
And it was the final big exam that everyone had to pass, to complete the course. And it was one of those, it was a high pass mark. It was one that you really needed to pass. And this instructor that we'd had, he'd kind of been making little niggles at me all through the time that we were with him. And I was the only girl on my course out of, I think there was 15 or 16 of us on course, and I was again
Right.
the only girl in the course. And when we all sat down ready for the exam, it was pretty stressful. And he just turned around and said to me, "Oh, Ellen, you don't need to worry about the exam. We'll go and sort something out in my office."
Mm.
And a couple of the guys kind of turned around and looked at me like shocked, and I was so embarrassed. But still to this day, I regret that I didn't say anything. I just kind of shook my head, put my head down, got on with the exam, and got out of there.
Yeah.
But it's only kind of like in thinking about that afterwards that I really wish that I'd said something, because, irrespective of, he said that to me, but I was thinking, how many in front of me has he said that to?
Yeah.
But also, I have protected the ones behind me. Of it's kind of saying that was acceptable. But
Mm.
what also disappointed me, not at the time, but as I've thought about it over the years, is I wish one of the guys had spoken up for me as well and had that allyship in the classroom. So even though they'd said to me, "Are you not going to say anything?" I was too embarrassed and too shy to say something. And I
Yeah.
really wish someone else had done that for me.
Do you like coffee? A lot of people tend to spend money on expensive coffees from outlets without even thinking about it. Well, for the price of just 2 coffees per month, you can gain access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joeteams.com now to find out more. That's teams.com to find out more.
And let's remember, I mean, that at the time you were pretty young, right? Because you were doing, you going like, it's like the equivalent of a Carter that I went on. And like on my Carter, how old was I? 19, right? And then if I've got a senior instructor ribbing me for something, it's thinking, it's like when it's like the sergeant when I was in training. We're having a tough time, right? The ground was frozen. We were supposed to dig a trench 6 foot deep, and he comes round to me and my oppo. We got a pick and a shovel. He says, "Oh, Connor." I says, "Yes, Sergeant." He said, "You're having a tough time, aren't you?" And I looked at him and I thought, well, if I say yeah, I'm going to get a rollicking, and if I say no, I'm going to get a rollicking. So I just looked at him. He said, "And I suppose you'd want some sympathy as well, wouldn't you, O'Connor?" So if I say yes, he's going to give me a rollicking, and if I say no, he's going to give me a rollicking. So I looked at him and he said, "The only place you'll find sympathy, O'Connor, is in a dictionary between SH1T and syphilis." And I thought, right, okay. Now, and that's because I was so young, I wouldn't ask him because I thought I was going to go to jail or I was going to get whatever. And putting into perspective, it's always good to know if you'd have known then what you know now. So
I know. Yeah.
So I suppose what I'm saying is there's no need to beat yourself up because at the time you were a young whippersnapper, wet behind the ears, and well, I mean, you're quite right. Well, shame on him, really.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's just a shame it wasn't highlighted for the person that he was. But yeah, I mean, it's high. I'd say it wasn't because of me happened to me. It was it's almost kind of like it's been accepted that he can do that. So whoever came before me, he may have treated them the same as well. So, but on the whole, my whole military career, I read things now and things that are in the papers and those kind of things. I never experienced anything half as bad as it was a very small isolated incident but in the whole I never had that a really big issue.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing that. And hopefully the purpose being that your story will help someone else to get through things. So I appreciate that. Now, what was the point when, after you've learned so much in the military, you've flown through the ranks? I mean, how did your structure go and your career journey go with the Navy after that?
So eventually came out. Obviously so in aircraft engineering, you then do a period of on-job training, and then you do a certificate of competency. So when I got through that, and then I thought, next step is promotion to petty officer, so sergeant kind of level. And with that, there's an exam, so you have to have done your certificate of competency before you qualify to sit the petty officer exam. So I did that at the end of. So I left there in March, did that in September, and because at the time that there was gaps in that rank. As soon as I got my results, I was kind of promoted. So within a year, I went from leading hand sort of corporal to PO. So I was promoted to PO by the time I was 27, I think I was. Did a few more, did another frontline tour on a Harrier squadron. Then that's when I went into the training school and did the training job. And then from there, I was then selected for chief. So I progressed quite quickly from leading hand to chief. And then when I got to chief and I'd got some GCSEs behind me and I was doing all of that, then that's when I started to think, actually, I could be an officer. So then I went through it was called a commissioning and warrants process. So you put your hand up, say, this is what I want to do. Sat AIB, didn't pass first time, but I went back a year later and passed. And then the year after that, I was selected. So then I went off to Dartmouth.
Well, now that's an interesting point, because one of the things I like to cover is failure, right? Because failure is great. because I think, and I say it repeatedly, fail is first attempt in learning, right?
Yeah.
How did it make you feel when you got that big fat Freddy result?
I was gutted, honestly. The AIB at the time, and interestingly, they changed how
AIB, so AIB.
yeah, yeah, Admiralty Interview Board in the Navy.
Right,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
it's kind of a 3-day interview process
Right.
to become a commissioned officer. And literally they look at everything, and I felt drained coming out, and I was so disappointed. But I think the biggest thing that I was disappointed about was everyone was bigging me up before I went. Oh, you'll be fine, you know, you'll get through it. This. And then because you're part of this CW organisation, you hear about everyone's stories about, oh, I did this and I passed, I did this and I failed. So I just went there with all these stories in my head thinking, right, I need to do it like this, I need to do it like that. And then when they said I wasn't successful, I kind of just sunk in my chair, and I was like, how am I going to go back and tell everyone that I didn't pass? And I was just like, well, maybe I'm not as good as I was. And actually, you know, all those years ago when I wasn't academic, all came like, well, actually, probably I'm not good enough to do this. And but I was invited back, but I took that time to reset and think, no, actually, I am good enough. I can do this. But when I apply again, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to listen to anyone's what they've done. I said I'm just going to go there and be myself. I can only ever be myself. And I went and I did that and I passed. And then everyone that spoke to me afterwards who were preparing for AIB, I said to them, I'm not going to tell you what my experience was at AIB, because you need to approach it in how you think you should, and you need to be yourself.
Yeah.
And present yourself of how you want to be presented. I said, yeah, there's certain things you need to learn, like on some of the tasks like time, speed, distance, and you might want to scrub up on those. But I'm not going to tell you how I think I passed or how I think I didn't do so well. You need to go and you need to present yourself of how you think you should do it. So yeah, that was a learning point for me. So yeah, it took me a while, but I picked myself up. I thought, no, I am good enough. I'm going to go and have another go. And if I don't make it this time, then I'll do something different.
Right, and like that's a great point about be yourself, because everyone else is taken. So just be yourself. And I was at a meeting, right, giving a presentation to a small group, 24 people, and I said to them, right, I said, listen guys, there's 25 meetings going on here. There's the one I think I'm giving, and there's 24 meetings that you think I'm giving, right? Because I interpret things differently, and you obviously got caught up in that, listening to other people's experiences, and really, that's got nothing to do with you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you because you just want to go and you just want to do so well, and you want to pass, and that's a career that you want to path that you want to go down. And then when it doesn't quite work out, it's kind of, oh, wasn't expecting that. So
but it's interesting though that you also identified that you do need to know certain structure and certain events and systems and techniques, processes. You need to know them. How you present it though is totally down to the individual, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So you got picked up for your commission, which, by the way, is great. And I've always enjoyed serving under, that's not to say I've never served under officers who've gone straight into Sandhurst, but I've always enjoyed serving with officers who have an ex-reg, because they've done it. And plus the fact it's really difficult to pull the wool over their eyes.
Yes.
We've done it. Bugger, that's not going to work.
I've been there. I've tried it.
So what happened? So what happened then? You get picked up for your commission, and where'd you go?
Yeah, so the branch was aviation support. So I kind of moved away from engineering and moved into the aviation support area. So I actually left from Sultan, where I was an avionics instructor, and the point to put me back into Sultan in the same organisation, but looking after survival equipment training. So I was a survival equipment training officer. And it was an area that I hadn't really touched before, so that was really interesting. But again, because I'd done quite a bit of training up to that point, it felt like a really comfortable position that I was now a training officer, and I could start to look at how training was managed and those kind of things. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I went to Illustrious. My next Illustrious was in refit, so I joined that, brought that out of refit and regenerated. We were regenerating quite quickly because we thought that we'd have to relieve Ocean on LME, but that all finished before that, before we got there. But so my job on there was the aircraft control room officer. So basically looking after, working with the aircraft handlers on the flight deck, making sure the aircraft were in the right place at the right time, working with the squadron engineers, making sure that the aircraft were available for the fly crew. So that was really an interesting job.
So
because I've been
on
a squadron.
That's like logistics on steroids, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit, yeah. And it's kind of connecting the squadrons with the support functions on the ship and those kind of things. Yeah, so that was a really interesting job. And then when I left there, I moved out of branch into a international defence training. And that one I absolutely loved that job. It really opened my eyes into another area. Because I wasn't aware that we provided so much training for foreign military. So that was how we arrange all that military, providing short-term training teams into different countries. So yeah, that was a real eye-opener. But then my pointer phoned me and said that he had a gap at Culdrose and he wanted me to go to the fire station at Culdrose, which I didn't really want to do that, but I went kicking and screaming. I was there a few months, and then an opportunity came up to be the executive officer of the School of Flight Deck Operations. So I kind of jumped at that, and I said I'd really like to do this job. It was in quite a bad place at the time when I got down there. The culture was really bad. It was quite toxic. People didn't want to be there. So I worked with the CO, and we made it into a place that people were asking to go and work there. It was probably one of the best jobs that I'd done, and that was the place where I left the Navy.
How long was it for?
How long was I there for?
Yeah,
I was there probably 18 months.
Oh, so to turn it around in such a short time, then that's
it was when I joined it, when I left, it was completely different place, because the CO was good too, and he was supportive of everything that I want to put in place. But I don't know, it just hit me one day. So I live near Portsmouth, so I was traveling 500 miles every weekend, living out of a bag. My husband was in the Navy at the time as well, and we were kind of, I was in the mess, living out of a bag. And I just got back one day and I just sunk on my bed and thought, what am I doing? I'm 42, I'm living out of a bag. I've been in the Navy almost 25 years, so 24 years at that point. I've nearly done a quarter of a century. There must be more that I could do. And from that point, I just made my mind up that I wanted to leave. So it wasn't because I didn't enjoy the Navy. I absolutely loved the job I was doing. I just thought, it's time to do something different. And
by the way, just give me a rundown on because I love aircraft, right? I love flying. And what type of kit did you work on? You worked on Harriers.
Yeah, that was pretty much. So I started on Sea King Mark IV, and then I worked on Sea Harriers. But I kind of moved around the circuit. So I'd be on a squadron, and then I was in the depth facility. I did a little bit in component workshops.
Right.
Then I was in training section, teaching avionics and Sea Harrier weapons and ejection seats. So it's all kind of related, most of it related to Sea Harrier. Right. Although I did do a job at Wittering. So I was part of Joint Force Harrier when we connected with the RAF on the GR7s and GR9s. I did a stint at RAF Wittering on a joint squadron, so it's 50% Navy, 50% RAF, and I was the quality manager on that squadron.
Which is quality is important, really, definitely.
Yeah.
How many times, you worked on the safety equipment? How many times did you get to press the button, on the eject when they've got to do the pilots do the water drills? Because that's great. That where they crash into the water upside down. They haven't got a clue where they are, and all they can look at is the bubbles to see where they're going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't get involved directly with that because I was the training officer, but yeah, it was quite interesting. But but it was really interesting being the injection seat instructor, and so I used to have to give briefs on the whole station because if an aircraft crashed on site,
Yeah.
the fire and rescue would be the first ones to come and making it safe, and then you'd also have to give a brief to the aircrew to make sure they knew how to operate the seat if they had an emergency. So. Yeah, it's very interesting time.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your
Yeah.
service on that. Cheers. So you're living in a bag. You're 42 years old. You've done 24 years, and you just wake up and you think, I love the Navy. I do not love this way of living. And plus the fact your husband, partner, sole partner in life is also in the Navy, and he's doing his bit. It's difficult enough having been married when only one of you's in the military, but when both of you and in the Navy, you go anywhere, don't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and we brought 2 boys up too.
Well,
so they were.
Yeah,
when I met my
into that.
Yeah, so he was. So they're my stepchildren. So he separated from his previous wife when the boys were 4 and coming up to 6. But then due to personal circumstances, we ended up with the boys living with us. So yeah, we both had a career in the Navy, bringing up 2 young boys as well. But we were lucky, and at the time it wasn't an official thing, but the appointer did make sure that he only sent one of us to sea at any one time.
Have you ever wondered what is going to happen to all your knowledge, wisdom, and skills when you die? Yeah, me too. That is exactly the reason why I created joeteam.com, so I can leave a legacy for my children and for other successful people who are just like you. For less than 40 pence per day, you get access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joeteams.com now to find out more. That's joeteams.com, joeteams.com to find out more.
So we kind of like crossed like ships in the night. So I'd go to sea, he'd be at home looking after the boys, and then he'd get a sea job. I'd be at home looking after the boys. But we did manage to get them into a boarding school from senior school age, which helped in our, because we both kind of had similar careers. We're both Sea Harrier engineers, both went through Dartmouth from being a chief, both same trade, both same branches in the as officers. So then we were then massaging both of our careers as commissioned officers as well, with 2 boys growing up through teenage
Oh, what a journey! And how are the boys? How do they view life now?
Really good, yeah. I'm a nanny now, so one of them's got 2 daughters. One's 4,
well done.
4 months old. So yeah, that's amazing now. So we're grandparents now as well, which is amazing. So yeah.
Oh, you don't look old enough to be a nanny, a grandmother, a grandma. That's brilliant. So you've left. How does it feel now? I mean, are you absolutely bricking it, or are you confident? And what's going through your mind?
I kind of was, because I was thinking, actually, I've done this and I don't really know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I can do outside. So there's a number of things. I mean, everyone thinks, well, not everyone, but a lot of people think first thing, oh, I'll be a project manager. But I soon thought, no, I don't want to do that. And I thought, I'll probably go into training. So, I'll do maybe a training job, learning development, something like that. And then when I started looking into that, it was, you needed certain qualifications to do that.
Yeah.
But then I did CCP. So I went on one of the workshops, and they were talking about writing a CV and those kind of things. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. So after the first night, I went away and looked on some job sites, and I found a quality manager job. I thought, oh, I could do that, because I've been at Wittering, done a quality manager job. I've got some skills in that. So I wrote all of my CV on this particular job spec. And then the next day I went to CTP and they were talking about networking. I thought, all right, I'm a bit shy, but I need to kind of reach out and see how I can do networking. So I went onto LinkedIn and put this job in, and a couple of names came up that have done the job before. So I reached out to them on LinkedIn, messaged them, and they both responded and said, oh, let's have a chat. One of them was talking to about job, and she said the job that I was looking at, she said, oh, I wouldn't look at that job, and she's had bad experience there. And then I spoke to this other guy who'd worked there, and he didn't talk about anything about that job, but he was talking about a job that they had available coming up. So he worked for Boeing Defence.
Right.
I didn't even know Boeing were working in the UK. It was the first time I'd heard of Boeing working in the UK. And he said, I'm looking for someone that works with the Navy, but in a civil capacity. So he told me about the job, and he said, if it's something you're interested in, I'll let you know when the job's available. So I sent him my CV that had been written on a quality job anyway. And then he let me know when the job was available. I applied for it. He interviewed me. I actually had 2 interviews, and they offered me the job. So I kind of fell into it on the back of CTP, if you like, because I wouldn't have thought about writing, tailoring my CV or networking if I hadn't have been to CTP workshop. So that really helped me think about how do I plan for roles that I want to do. So I do consider myself lucky that the first job that I'd applied for, I actually got, and I'm still with Boeing now. So
Wow.
I haven't moved around anywhere else. So
And how long have you been with them, with Boeing now?
9 years now.
Right. So you
Yeah.
pretty much like to, if you're happy, you pretty much like to stay where you are, don't you?
Yeah.
Now that's a term that I hear regularly as well, that I'm really lucky, right? Now,
Yeah.
now the fact is, it's like you're an overnight success. Yeah, mate, maybe, but it's taken me 20 years to be an overnight success. And why I say this is because that's why I love to get the build up. Because, right, as a child, you thought you were going to be a typist, right?
Yep.
And maybe rise to the dizzy heights of being a secretary or PA, and then that'd be it, cap, done. And plus the fact you might have been a bit thick as well, or seen as a bit thick.
Yeah.
And instead, building up to you being lucky when you left the military, right? You put in for courses, you failed your what was it? The Admiral interview board, right?
Yes.
You went back, you did it again, right? You just kept going for jobs and going for jobs, and then you were thinking about what you were going to do at the age of 42. I don't like this anymore, so you jumped again. So I just want to put that word "look" into perspective. Labor under correct knowledge.
Yeah.
Does that make
But
sense?
if it wasn't for the opportunities in the military, though, being able to, all that access to education and everything that when I first joined, I didn't know anything about, but I soon discovered, how much is available. I was really lucky, and I used the credits, the ELCs. So I did certificate in education by ELC, and I also did a HNC in aeronautical engineering with one of my ELCs as well.
Yeah, because they're the learning credits, aren't they?
And then you've got the yes, yeah.
So, not taking anything away from obviously the education that you've got, and I think that's why the military is great, because it also made me, right?
Yeah.
Because it took me from not being academic to realizing that I've got to do stuff. I've got to look. Yeah. And so we know you deal with failure. How do you deal with success? And you might say, I'm not successful, but let's just assume that I think you're successful, right? How do you get there? What are your processes? What do you do? Because I know we'll talk about your Boeing career in a minute. What do you do to really, what's that switch that just goes right? Failure, no. Success, yes.
I don't know. I think pretty much if something goes positive my way, I pinch myself and go, did that really happen for me? I kind of
Right.
go, I guess it's back to that when we were talking about that early of, you know, well, I'm probably not good enough for that. But then when something happens, I'm kind of like, oh, that's amazing. Right. How can I make a go of this? How can I improve things? How can I make it good? I've been offered this role, I've been offered this position. How can I make it a success continuing, and is there anything I can improve in it? So yeah, I'm kind of, you know, I guess sometimes I get embarrassed about some, like, oh gosh, did they really mean me? Or it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's, but
Well,
yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of turning it and going, yeah, but you know, and then recognizing other people that might have helped me in that, in being able to get to where I've got to as well. So
yeah.
you know,
I,
I guess you're your own success, aren't you? But
yeah.
people have to get there.
And I use the term regularly as well, standing on the shoulder of giants. Because
Yeah.
I only know what I know, and I certainly don't know everything. I only know what I know because people, the giants before me, have taught me,
Yeah.
or mentored me in coaching. So that's a great point, which brings me on to how important do you think mentoring, getting a good mentor is, and a coach? Because I know you are a mentor and coach now in your own right.
Yeah.
How do you think that helped you?
So I think I probably never really connected where mentorship was, because I always think, oh, it has to be some kind of formal relationship or something. But I've realised that it's not just that. It's reaching out to different expertise at different times and getting their advice and their knowledge, and so it doesn't really have to be a formal mentoring relationship.
No.
I've really struggled with that. How you get to one person, and you know, and I've really struggled previously to go, well, this is what I do. I don't know what I want to do. And whenever I've had those formal relationships, I've always been, well, I don't really know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm kind of like in that still. Have I still reached what I want to do? But I'm not sure what it is that I want to do. But I think the value is in having lots of connections and knowing those people that you can reach out to at certain times to ask for advice on, or you know, even just, you know, we'll do it internally. Someone will phone me, or I'll phone someone and go, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? How would you do this? And I think it's recognizing that they're mentoring relationships as well, because you're reaching out for different people for different advice at different points of your career, or even just in a task, or just something you do day to day.
Which is a great form of leadership, actually, when you're asking, because I think that I say that one of the three secrets that I think to good performance is asking world-class questions, listening actively, and then being an accountability partner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and actually being I guess being humble as well, because something rang home to me, and I didn't even know that I was doing this, but I had a team meeting, and I actually said to my team, I said, well, I don't know all the answers. You know, you've come up with a really good idea, and you know, you can tell me. And one of them messaged me afterwards and said that was really nice to hear you say that, because everyone sees you as, because you're at the level that you're at, that you know everything, and actually you've got all the answers. So it was really refreshing to hear you say that you don't have all the answers. I was like, well, I can't possibly know everything. That's why you have the team around you of experts that you can lean on. And it doesn't matter where you are in the organization, you know, you're there because of your knowledge, and you've got the SME advice. So I'm going to come and ask you because I want to understand it as well.
And I bet your team will follow you to the ends of the earth as well.
I hope so. I'd like to think
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I know you're not going to say, yeah, of course they will, mate. But I reckon I get a good feel, because I think a great leader is someone who can get someone to do something they wouldn't have done if you hadn't been there. And to be able to do that, that's great. And speaking of which, because you touched on networks before, because when we're in the military, we're networking without even realizing it, because we've got buddy systems, and you watch my back, I'll watch yours. So how important do you think the networking has been to you when you've left? And in Civvy Street.
Yeah, it's so important because and I see quite a bit on LinkedIn, and I see other people saying, oh, I want this job, and you see people going, networking is key, because I think, you know, people apply for jobs, but without people understanding where you are, what you are, and I sometimes see it's really difficult, and it was for me, of how you interpret what you've done in the military into a CV.
Yeah.
So actually having those networks of people that you can reach out to and ask to for advice, to go, you've been, or, you know, either you've been through this, or what do you think? How do you think I should do this? Because I know when I went to CTP and they asked me to tailor my CV, and I felt like half of my life had been dropped because it wasn't, because I couldn't put it in my CV. It's kind of like, I've done all of this, surely someone will want to know. But actually now being a hiring manager, I'm looking for the key skills for the job. So I now understand why they say tailor the CV, because, you know, I'm not interested if you were part of a rugby team here or whatever you've done. How does that relate to the job now? So having those networks and contacts to help you through how you navigate interpreting your really valuable career and your knowledge, because as military, we find it hard to really put down on paper what we've actually done, because we think, yeah, but that's what we do. That's just, but a civilian employer doesn't know what you've done or how valuable that is. So it's, yeah, networks are really key, and be brave and reach out, even if you don't know them. You know, just you know, if they, it doesn't matter if they don't reply, at least you've tried.
Yeah.
But probably 9 times out of 10, someone is going to respond to you and go, yeah, sure, let me have a look, let me help you, let me, yeah.
And so long as you ask in a polite way and
Yeah.
you ask the right questions. I've never, well, have I? No, I can't say I've never. But usually when I've asked the question, can you help me? There's not many people who've said no.
No.
No, it's just
No,
I need some help. I'm on my uppers. I need some help. What can you do? And most people will come to you.
yeah. Or even if they go, oh, actually, I don't know anything about that, they'll then signpost to someone else that they do know.
Yeah. So we've touched on it. In fact, we've really delivered on the transferable skills. And now that you're in a position where you're looking at CVs from time to time, what are you looking for in them? What sort of values are you looking for, and strengths? And indeed, if someone's got a weakness, how could they present that in a way that you could identify with it?
Yeah, I think most ones when I look through is, have they really pulled out what their experience is against the job description? So one, and, you know, and hiring managers aren't looking for 100%. You're looking for, you know, is there anything in here? And even if it's not in the job description, sometimes we'll look and go, actually, I've got another role coming up. They've got that experience. I'll keep them on note. Or sometimes we'll go, not for this job. I know someone else that's hiring that CV fits for someone else. So that's kind of generally when I'm looking. But if it's there's sometimes you see a lot of acronyms. Sometimes you see a lot of, this is what I've done, and if I can't connect with what the CV is telling me, it's really difficult for me to know that they've got the skills and experience I'm looking for the job description.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of self-starter stuff of, you know, I've led this, you know, it doesn't always have to be leading of a project, but I've worked this project, this was the result. So we're always looking for, what was the action you took and what was the result from that action? So you can see, yes, you're part of a team doing this, but, you know, that's kind of everyday stuff. But, you know, what big results have you had from what you've achieved?
Yeah.
And whether that's as an individual or as a team, you've always had some success as an individual, but yeah.
And what you discovered about yourself, and how it could impact and positively impact on the role that's being asked for and the vacancy.
Yeah. Oh, and the other one is, a CTP tell you this all the time, keep your CV to 2 sides. And that is really important. I get CVs sometimes that are 10 pages long. And by the time you get to the second page, you've kind of given up hope, but the key skill could be on page 10.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, when you're reading 20, 30 CVs, if you get a 10 pager, you're kind of like, I haven't got time to read literally everything in there.
So that's interesting, because I know you could easily fill 10 pages with your career. So what would you do? What would you identify? Like, would it just be, how many of the past jobs that you've had would you put in? Say you've had a lot of careers, like on LinkedIn, it might say 28 more experiences, and then you might scroll down. So what would you be looking at bringing out in a CV then?
So definitely look at what the job spec is looking for, and then, people that I talk to that are already in, that's still in the military, that are thinking of leaving, I get them to start putting together we call it a brag sheet in the Navy, but starting to put together a sheet of all your achievements and highlights. So whenever you do something, put them down, write them down, and then when you see a job description that says some of, whatever it might be, you can then go, oh, actually I did that there, and that was the achievement, and that was a highlight. Pull that one into your CV. So every job you go for, you should be tailoring it to what the job description is, and not just have one CV for everything, because then you can really start to pull in, and don't put too much detail on it either. So we're looking for bullet points, but those really key highlights of, this is what you did, and this was the achievement that I got from this. And you can put your career history in, so you can see that there isn't a gap, because also some hiring managers will go, hold on, there's a gap there. What did they do there? Or so you can just put a one-liner of, as military between here and here. But then you can start to pull out, these are my key achievements, these are my qualifications, this is how I've used those qualifications.
That's top notch. Thank you. That's great information. So we're coming to the closing time now, and I've really enjoyed our time together. What is the one top tip you would give to someone leaving the military, or a veteran who's been out for a while and maybe struggling, or someone who's doing really well, or indeed just a civilian who wants to know to get better results? What's the one tip?
Definitely network. If there's something you're unsure of, network. Use LinkedIn, use whatever networks you've got, speak to people, and ask them to, even review impartially. Have a look at your CV, have a look, see if there's anything that you think is missing. Is there something that they can help with you to pull out some of that information or advice? Yeah, and then just, if there's a company that you want to work for, just search the company and have a look on LinkedIn, see who works for them, and just reach out to them, ask questions, get your name in there, because something might come up, and even an offline conversation, you might go, oh, actually, we're looking for someone with those skills. Can you send me your CV? So they, even those offline connections, and do attend CTP. Go and talk to people direct on those CTP events. Because then you can start to build your network. I generally say to people, add me on LinkedIn when I've spoken to them at CTP events. And again, start to build your network.
And talking about mnemonics, CTP, career transition program. Yeah, just in case you're listening and you're thinking, what the heck CTP? Because we mentioned it a few times. I just thought, right. So listen, Ellen, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it. Can't believe it's an hour already.
I know. And listen, thank you so much. What if people wanted to get in touch with you to run something by you? How could they get in touch? What's the best way to get in touch?
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. So I work for Bone Defence UK. I'm the senior quality manager. I'm also a reservist as well. So if anyone's thinking of joining the reserves and how that looks from civilian employers, then just.
Oh, of course, because we never touched on that actually. I've just got to jump in that before you go. Right.
Yeah, go on.
Right, and that's probably another reason. Oh, naughty boy, Joe! We didn't touch on that. Right. Another reason probably why you felt it was an easier transition It's because you went into reserves, didn't you? The reserves.
I did. Yeah. So I joined. So as I said, I didn't leave the Navy because I wasn't enjoying it. I wanted to still stay connected. So I joined the reserves the day after I left regulars. So I'm in the air branch. I'm now the executive officer of HMS Pegasus, which commissioned probably about 18 months ago. So yeah, and one of the things that I asked on my interview was, do you support reservists? I think going in there thinking, oh, I've joined the reserves, and they might not be supportive, but they absolutely were. And you'll find that most companies are, especially through the covenant and the employee recognition scheme that most companies sign up to, have a reservist policy. So yeah, we have people internally that very often come to me and say, oh, I want to be a reservist, what do I do? And so yeah, so that transition was easy. So for me, because I joined the reserves, I joined a defence company, and people were kind of talking the same language as me when I joined. So yeah, I did find, for me personally, the transition wasn't as difficult as some might find it.
Right. Well, thank you for your service in the regs. Thank you for your continuing service in the reservists. And I look forward to speaking to you again. Have a brilliant day. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.